The hypocrisy of silence. How political and union leaders fail injured workers. The ongoing crisis. Injured workers in America face not only physical pain but also the emotional and financial toll of navigating a system rigged against them. Despite cries for help, their plight is met with systemic neglect and deliberate silence. This negligence echoes through the very halls of justice that should protect them. Across Washington state, union leaders like Larry Brown and April Sims, and political figures such as Representative Mary Foss, Senator Bob Hasagawa, and Representative Emily Wicks, have turned a blind eye to the pressing need for federal standards and a national workers' compensation commission. Their actions, or lack thereof, serve as a betrayal of the workers they claim to represent. The betrayal by unions, long heralded as protectors of labor rights, have increasingly aligned themselves with initiatives like Whole Washington, a state-based single-payer healthcare proposal. While healthcare reform is critical, using it as a distraction to avoid addressing federal oversight for workers' compensation is a disservice to injured workers. Larry Brown, tied to the Washington State Labor Council, exemplified this apathy when he remarked to an injured worker, "You're getting a state landy pension, so that makes everything okay." This callous statement dismisses the lifelong struggles of injured workers, equating compensation with justice, a notion as flawed as telling an abused spouse that alimony is a substitute for dignity. Political silence and incrementalism. Senator Marco Leas and Bob Hasagawa, both Democrats, have championed Whole Washington. However, their push for state-based incremental reforms mirrors Republican strategies designed to sideline broader federal solutions. Injured workers need immediate, uniform federal protections, not piecemeal state experiments that perpetuate inequality. Meanwhile, figures like Representative Emily Wicks have failed to engage meaningfully with constituents advocating for federal workers' rights, focusing instead on silencing dissenting voices through legal intimidation and bureaucratic apathy. The LGBTQ leadership's role. The hypocrisy extends to certain LGBTQ leaders who, while advocating for their community's rights, remain silent on injured workers' issues. Leaders like Tracy Carlos of the Washington State Laborers and others have consistently ignored the need for federal oversight of workers' compensation. This selective advocacy undermines the interconnected struggle for justice and equality. Harvey Milk's vision of collective liberation is betrayed when one marginalized group disregards the suffering of another. Exploitation of immigrants. Latino Legislative Day in Washington state highlighted the exploitation of immigrant workers. Instead of addressing the dire need for federal oversight, state leaders like Lieutenant Governor Habib and Representative Ortiz self-perpetuated a false narrative, claiming that Latino workers face no barriers in reporting workplace injuries. This manipulation is particularly egregious given that many Latino workers suffer in silence due to fear of retaliation or deportation. The case for federal standards. The need for federal oversight of workers' compensation is not a new concept. As early as 1972, recommendations for federal intervention were proposed, yet no substantial action has been taken. Reports by NPR and ProPublica reveal how state systems have systematically slashed benefits, prioritizing employer profits over worker welfare. Injured workers are left to navigate a broken system that varies wildly from state to state, with no consistent standards to ensure their rights. Call to action. It is time to hold political leaders, union representatives, and advocacy groups accountable for their silence and inaction. The following steps are critical. Federal oversight. Demand the establishment of a National Workers' Compensation Commission to create uniform standards across all states. Union accountability. Urge unions like the Washington State Labor Council to prioritize injured workers' rights over politically convenient state initiatives. Breaking the silence. Encourage leaders like Mary Foss, Marco Leas, and Emily Wicks to use their platforms to advocate for federal human rights for workers. End exploitation. Protect immigrant workers by enforcing anti-retaliation laws and ensuring they have access to compensation without fear of deportation. Public awareness. Amplify the stories of injured workers to expose the systemic injustices they face. Conclusion. The silence surrounding injured workers is complicity. It reflects a broader failure to uphold the principles of justice and equality. Political leaders and unions must choose. Will they continue to peddle state-level distractions and protect business interests, or will they stand up for the federal human rights of injured workers? The time for action is now. Justice delayed is justice denied. For more information on the ongoing crisis and proposed solutions, explore ProPublica's report, The Demolition of Workers' Compensation here.